Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Bitcoin. It is time for another update and we start here on the large time frame where we are tracking basically a series of 1-2 setups that have formed over the years, and then this being the latest 1-2 setup that I'm tracking. Now within this structure to the upside I could actually consider a full count. I don't need any additional highs to consider this pattern to the upside complete, and in that case we should actually be prepared for a deeper retracement in a follow-up wave 2 correction in this area. And yeah, we can even add an area of support for such interpretations where we are only looking to start the area at the 30.9k level all the way down to the 6.9k level. Now I want to make it clear, even if we start our correction in wave 2, this area doesn't mean that we need to get to the 6 to the 7k level, okay? We could get, for example, just to this first level of support and then push directly higher into a follow-up wave 3. It is not necessary to retrace so deeply. In fact, if it really is such a large series of 1-2 setups, it would be rather preferred that this wouldn't necessarily have too deep of a correction, because within a third wave of a third wave of a third wave and so on, it would rather be expected to have quite shallow retracements in some cases, not even getting to the support area, the general support area, in which cases we may need to consider a different interpretation or allow at least an even higher level of support. And for now, we will be tracking this in the back of our minds. This is, again, only assuming that we have already topped within the wave 1. If we push higher, if we still extend higher, we would need to adjust this area of support. And for now, I do have a scenario that still allows us to continue looking for new highs and also indicates to us when a top is likely to have already formed. And for the large time frame, before we get to those interpretations, I also wanted to point out there are interpretations that would allow a closer area of support from the current levels, but it would be one where I would need to consider this a 1-2 setup itself. Well, in that case, I wouldn't be looking here at a 1, 2, 3. I would need to consider all of these movements a 1, 2, a 1, 2, 1, 2 setup as well, and then this would be an additional 1, 2. I don't necessarily find that preferable. It would maybe be personally preferable because we wouldn't necessarily push so low for some of you. But from a structural integrity standpoint, I would actually prefer this to be a singular larger wave 1. Now, with that said, we can move here into the shorter time frame where, once again, we have a full count possible. We are looking here for a 5-wave move to the upside, and we have a 1, 2, 3, 4th, and the 5th. So we can consider this pattern complete. We are tracking an impulse, and within the 5th, to the upside, we are tracking an ending diagonal. So this could be something like a 1, 2, 3, 4th, and the 5th, and the pattern could be complete. However, within certain scenarios, we could still look for extensions even higher, and in one of those scenarios is what we are tracking here, a wave 1 up, a wave 2 down, and this would be a third wave up, and we would now be looking for the correction here in a wave 4. And for this, we have an area of support between the 102.7k level all the way down to the 73.6k level, where a break below the 61.8% retracement would actually be quite a good signal that we have a more significant top within this larger pattern to the upside. I don't necessarily have interpretations that could allow deeper retracements and still form local highs within the wave 1. They may appear, but right now they aren't necessarily too obvious, and I would prefer, if we are to extend higher, to hold this area of support. Now, within this correction in the wave 4, I have presented the relevant areas of resistance in the previous video, and what we were tracking is the idea of an ABC structure to be formed to the downside, and I even presented to you, actually I want to go through that quickly, I presented you this idea, this idea of the RSI being a signal that every time on the daily that we have pushed into the oversold territory, a local low has been formed. For example, here we have pushed higher, again we touched the oversold area. This was another significant low. We extended higher. Once again here in this wave 2 bottom, we pushed higher, here. And then I want to make clear that it doesn't mean that a low is already in place. It is indicating that it is in a bottoming region. This is what happened this cycle. It happened many times throughout the entire history chart for Bitcoin. It didn't always work, but within this cycle, it did work every single time, and it can be used together with some other evidence for information that a local low may be formed and we should be looking for a higher retracement. Now again, the same thing happened here. We have pushed into the oversold territory. Here we actually had to do it a couple of times before we formed this actual low. But for example here, we pushed into oversold territory and then we formed still a lower low on the chart, while on the other side we formed a higher low, but then we still extended higher. Well, right now we are in the same territory. We have pushed once again into the oversold levels and we could be looking at a local low. But within my interpretation, I would actually prefer to see still one more extension to the downside within this wave 4, well, or where in or on the RSI, I don't necessarily expect to get into the oversold territory or even form a lower low, but I would expect, or I would see it as a possible divergence for this interpretation. Now, for the scenario that we are tracking from an Elliott wave perspective, we are looking here at a 3-wave move to the downside, an ABC structure ideally. Now in this interpretation, we would still expect to see an additional low, and we had these areas of resistance that would have actually allowed us to extend lower. And we even had an area of resistance for this wave 3 where we were expecting a lower extension. Yeah. And within this wave C, we are tracking an ending diagonal, so this would have been an ABC pattern in a wave 1, ABC pattern in a wave 2, and ABC pattern in the third wave to the downside. Now, since we broke here above the area of resistance, it is indicating to us that we shouldn't be looking for any additional lows within this wave to the downside, and it would actually require a slight adjustment of the count where I would need to consider this the A wave bottom, this the B wave top, and then this the C wave to the downside. In that case, we can remove even the area of resistance, but I want to show you once again how relevant it has proven. Yeah, we have gotten to the 38.2% retracement, we got rejected. We got to this 50% retracement, we got rejected. We got to the 61.8% retracement, we got rejected. We managed to push higher afterwards, but there was a fight. There is a clear conflict between the bulls and the bears on which side we are going to, or which side is going to win. And even here, on the larger perspective, in this wave 4, we can notice that, again, we have pushed into the 23.6% retracement. This was actually in confluence, but we got rejected. Here at the 38.2% retracement, only a small stoppage of this larger and stronger movement to the upside, this stronger candle on the 4-hour time frame. But then once again, right now, here on at the 50% retracement, we pushed into it and got rejected. So there is a clear fight, and I have to say, as long as we stay here below the 61.8% retracement at the 96.3k level, I could easily still consider another low is rather likely than not. Now, at this 50% retracement, we also have some structural support, or sorry, not support, resistance. We have some structural resistance, which is not necessarily a surprise that it is being proven difficult to break. We might see some headwinds in the coming price regions, and also here at the 61.8% retracement is the case. Yeah, we are also seeing here structural resistance. Now, if we indeed manage to break above this level, I actually do have an interpretation that could allow a more significant bottom to have already formed within this wave 4, and it would need a slight adjustment of the interpretation of the count, and I would probably need to consider this wave A to have bottomed here. Instead, I would need to consider this, the B wave top, and then this C wave could work to the downside even as an actual impulse. So it's not a problem for the scenario that we are tracking here from the larger time frame perspective of having having this wave 4. It is not a problem that we do not follow through and form another low. Actually, from no perspective is it really a problem. It is just a high risk at the moment, especially again once or as long as we hold here below the 61.8% retracement. Now, we can look here in the short time frame in this wave 4 to the upside, or this pattern, let's say. at a couple of perspectives. We could be looking for a bottom to have already formed within the large wave 4, and we could be looking for a series of 1-2 setups in this area, yeah? And then I could easily see a third wave already start. And if this really is to be the case, I wouldn't necessarily expect too deep of a retracement within this wave 4, or sorry, within this wave 2. When such patterns occur, they usually work out in a way where in the wave 2, yeah, before we actually start the strongest move to the upside, the actual wave 3, in the wave 2 we don't necessarily invalidate even the support levels for a wave 4, which is why we are going to use that as the first indication, the first signal that the structure is going to break down and not going to hold. And in that case, we can track here a possible 1-2 setup in a yellow scenario. But again, I will be using the area of support for an interpretation here for a wave 4. It would be rather unlikely that if we break here below the 50% retracement that we would still manage to push directly into a third wave to the upside. It could still work out into a continuation here in the series of 1-2 setups, but I have to come in and say that from a wave 4 perspective, yeah, from the white scenario perspective, where internally here we are tracking another possible low, we could consider this something like an ABC movement to the upside, in which case it could already be complete. Now, if we look here on the 1 hour time frame, we could actually even allow extensions here within any of these waves. Yeah, this movement to the upside doesn't look particularly complete. Yeah, I could easily see further extensions, but it is on a very small time frame. It is not necessarily the most reliable, and I have to say, if we are looking from a large time frame perspective, we have fulfilled all expectations. Yeah, not even that large, but we have fulfilled all expectations within this wave 4, and we could be heading to the downside in a fifth wave, where again, from an RSI perspective, we do expect divergence. We don't want to see actually another low being formed here. It would actually be quite likely that if we form another low on the RSI, a lower low, we are going to see already lower prices, even below the 61.8% retracement, which would be the level that would tell me that this structure to the upside is likely not going to extend. And for now, these are the levels. This is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.